Alright, so in terms of collaborative expertise, this is where it gets quite complicated, whether you call it a community of practice or a professional learning community or professional learning teams, or a range of different acronyms that have been around for the generation I've been in teaching. The key chapter for me, and obviously it was a bit of a reminder rather than a fresh take, but sort of looking at the complexity and the limitations of PISA data, the sampling and comparing small nations to bigger nations, to monocultural nations to multicultural nations and so forth. It's pretty clear that Australia has something that we should be looking at in terms of PISA data, but I think Pasi says it best when he links that to equity. Basically, if we increase the equity of our system, our excellence, I feel, is there, and this book is kind of a really good example of the excellence that exists within our systems in different areas and different approaches, but it requires expertise from one of the teachers, one of the leaders, whatever it may be. And in short, it appears, at least from this book, that each person can only really possess the answer to one complex question at a time. So, maybe this school's makerspace is sort of leading the way, whereas this school's Indigenous education approach is best practice. But to make that more widespread, we need a different approach, I guess. And that's where the equity would come in, when you're sharing the expertise of these little sites, which aren't necessarily siloed, but they are localized and contextualized. And broadening that out and making that collaborative is where it really becomes complicated, because collaboration takes a great deal of time, and time costs money, and we are amongst the leaders in face-to-face teaching time. So to allow true collaboration to take place, you need time. We've all, as teachers, experienced a long day of full-on teaching followed by a meeting, and if you just think of how that's structured, the thing that is perhaps, according to some parts of this book, the most important, the collaborative part, is sort of given least importance in terms of where it sits in the day and the energy levels that people bring to it. So in terms of warnings and sort of difficulties with collaborative expertise, what I just said, I guess, is one part of it. Well-being is kind of part of the key, really. And that, you can go from weakness to strength, but that it requires a great deal of collaboration and supporting of one another. It's not simple. You should engage with the ideas and the sort of things that surround us, but not become overwhelmed by them. So PISA data is one piece of information, NAPLAN data, likewise HSC, ATAR, VCE, whatever you want to focus on. All these data points have relevance in the information they provide, but they're not the be-all and end-all, and that we can sort of find a way throughout it. And just to be aware of burnout, I think, is one of the key warnings that I took from this section. So I think well-being is the key to any collaboration. And this is true of teaching as well. If you have teachers with a high level of well-being, then your students are much more likely to have that as well, and be able to be in sort of a parasympathetic state, I believe it's called, sort of calm, relaxed, and willing to receive information from others. There's the issue of burnout as well amongst teachers, but there's also, I think, the hardest part to talk about really is the complexity of the role of teachers in well-being, in the sense that, as a teacher myself, I feel confident and comfortable saying that a lot of the issues that teachers face are, at least in part, self-inflicted. So, you don't take a sick day when you should because you're worried about your students, and you do all your marking on a Sunday and leave no space for your own mental health. And part of that, I think we as teachers need to take responsibility for, and as well as the system isn't supporting us in the way that we feel it should, but we're doing everything in our power to make sure that the system succeeds. So we're kind of propping up a broken system, but as a result, we're kind of impacting on our own physical and mental health in a negative way. But that, in theory, is helping our students because we're focusing on the work and the marking and getting things done really efficiently. But in certain situations, perhaps slowing down and allowing things to sort of be as they are is something we should try to work on.